Get started. Okay. All right, everybody. My name is Aiten Salahi. I'm the founder and executive director of the Planetary Health Collective, and you are joining us tonight for the first ever Cook for the Climate event. So we put together this event so that we could have a fun and stimulating environment where we could chat with people of different backgrounds and learn about how they use food in their community to educate on the connection between human health and environmental health and what that means in different cultural contexts. So tonight we're joined by Denee Becks of Tumbleweed Nutrition. Denee is an outpatient registered dietitian who is employed with the Navajo Nation Hospital. She's also an advocate for healthy traditional Navajo diets and homegrown food in Native communities. She was born and raised on the Navajo Nation, and she is of the Charcoal Streak division of the Red Running Into the Water clan. Her concentrations are in diabetes, nutrition, community health, education, and intuitive eating. Amazing. Denee also contributes gardening articles for the local Native community newspaper and is a founder of the Navajo Land Gardeners and Farmers on Facebook. So check them out if you aren't already a part of that group. And lastly, Denee is also the owner and founder of Tumbleweed Nutrition. So Denee is busy, but she has been gracious enough to join us tonight for the Cook for the Climate event. Woohoo, I see Mary in the chat. Hi, Mary. And so I'm gonna pass it off to Denee to just share a little bit more about herself, her story of self, what it is that brought her to this work, and what she hopes we'll take out of our event tonight.
Okay, thank you, Aiten. That was such a great introduction. And I just want to introduce myself in my own language. So I am Navajo or Denee. She'e Denee Becks Yinishia, Nanesh Aja Tachini Nishle, Maidish Gijni Bashichin, Tkodachini Dashache, Kia Ani Dashanala. So what I did there in Navajo, we have a clan system, and we have 4 clans that come from my mom's mom, my dad's mom, let me get this right, my mom's dad, and my dad's dad. And so we have 4 clans that tell us who we are and it's how we relate to anybody. So if I meet somebody with my same clan, my first clan, that automatically makes me their sibling. And so it's really cool the way we relate to each other. And so my 4 clans in English are, my first clan is Charcoal Streak Division Running Into the Water. My second clan is Coyote Pass People Clan. My third clan is the Bitterwater clan, and my 4th clan is the must went into Navajo, is Towering House. So that's how we relate to each other in our communities. I became a dietitian back in 2017, and I just really enjoy working with food. I like doing cooking classes. I'm really passionate about working for my community in nutrition and helping our communities live healthier in a way that feels right to them, which means still incorporating cultural foods. And we kind of have an issue where up until pretty recently, a lot of our foods, a lot of our traditional foods have been shamed, and a lot of our community members feel ashamed to eat our food just because we hear a lot of from Western providers that we can't eat our food because it's deemed unhealthy. And so I'm kind of part of that generation that's trying to fight back against that. And as a dietitian, I can at least say, like, no, these foods really are healthy. And that's what the dish today is about. The dish is called blue corn mush, and it's high in antioxidants, and we'll go a little bit more into that and all the whole nutrient profile as we're adding in those ingredients. But I'm very passionate about working for my community, and I love gardening. So I just, I figured I'd combine everything and create this company, and that allows me to kind of express myself a little bit more creatively. My full-time job is I'm a clinical dietitian on a reservation hospital. And clinical dietitians, I take my hat off to you. And I didn't think I'd be in this field for this long. And I was nearing the end of 2 years, and I was like, I'm ready to go. And then the pandemic hit, and then wasn't the right time to make a transition. And so So here I am 4 years later as a clinical dietitian, but I do enjoy it. But calculating TPN and tube feeding isn't my heart's desire. I really enjoy working with my community and helping to see like, okay, well, this is how we can incorporate traditional foods into a healthy diet. So that's where I'm coming from. Oh, just so you know where I'm calling in from. So I'm located in Arizona. I am, if you know where the Four Corners are, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico meet. I am like probably right on the border between New Mexico and Arizona. So I'm pretty close to the Four Corners region. And the town I live in is called Fort Defiance. So our history goes way back. Yeah, that's kind of everything I've got for now.
That's brilliant, Denee, and we're so lucky to have you here, and your patients are so lucky to have you in their clinics, because I'm sure it makes a huge difference for them to see somebody who looks like them, who grew up with the same culture as them, using the same language as them. And so we're grateful for you, and thankfully you stuck it out in clinical, and also that you are like using your specialty in such a creative way, and educating people on how to not only get the best nutrition out of their food, but also how to grow it and to preserve, traditional Navajo foodways. So it's really fabulous what you're doing, and I cannot wait to get into it. So tonight, we have a couple of learning objectives, and first and foremost, we want to chat with you and learn everything from you about the significance of tonight's spotlight ingredient, which is blue corn, and also juniper ash. And we want to learn the significance of that in Navajo tradition, and also get a sense of some different growing practices that are used on the Navajo reservation, and maybe some unique resource constraints that you're facing on the reservation that folks may or may not be aware of in their day-to-day life. And then lastly, to elevate some ways that tonight's attendees and the folks who watch this video later on can support food sovereignty in different Native communities. I mean, and then, cherry on top is that we get to learn and enjoy a delicious Navajo recipe all together. And I also just want to let everybody know, just a brief reminder, tonight's event is a fundraiser event. 100% of the proceeds from this event and your donations will go towards a community-led event that Denee is hosting. And I'll just pass it back to you, Denee, to let people know a little bit more about that event, when it is, and what those donations will be going towards exactly.
Yeah, so part of me creating this company was the intention. One of the intentions behind it is to support something called food sovereignty. So food sovereignty in Indigenous communities, what that means to us is that we are taking back our ability to grow, produce, and market our own traditional foods, but also other types of foods as well. So I think it's very important that we support local farmers and support local food, because that's how we're going to create a healthier community. Because for the most part, where I live on the reservation, it's the biggest Indian reservation in America. However, it's about the size of West Virginia. However, we have 14 grocery stores that cover that whole land base. And a lot of we have a major grocery store chain, Arizona grocery store chain, that has established their stores here, and a lot of the food is shipped in. And so that means we have lower quality food. We have, not the best looking food. We have limited access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And we do have higher food prices because it takes, we're so rural. And so I think it's very important that we support our community to create our own food. So with that, me and another company called Biddy Baby Foods, we actually started our two companies about the same time. And we've been just kind of cheering each other on when we get frustrated and when we feel like we're going up the hill and with no shoes on. We're we're very passionate about making sure that we're growing our own food, supporting our own farmers. So Bitty Baby Foods is actually an agricultural, what do you call it? Agricultural collective. And they actually produce a traditional food called neshtiji. That's a dried steamed corn product. However, and in addition to that, they grow 6 acres, but then they just told me, yeah, that's the blue corn. They just told me that this weekend they're going to be planting blue corn as well, and then some other items as well. So they created a baby food product as well. And they ground up the neshtiji, the Navajo steamed corn, into a fine powder, and you can add that to baby foods, kind of mix it in and make little hot cereals as like a first food for babies. So we've partnered, and we're going to try to celebrate their line of that baby food product and Navajo steamed corn. And so we're trying to, we're creating this event, which is happening on July 23rd. And we really want to make sure that we don't, like for these kind of events, we don't like charge a ticket price. It's a donation only event. And we're going to set up on their farm. And if they can't donate, and because a lot of our families are lower income, I think the stat was like around 40% of our population are below the poverty level. And so we were very adamant about making sure we're not charging. So if they can't, even if they can't donate $1, then we're just telling them, just show up. We want to share this local food with you that we're growing. And we want to share this experience with you on the farm, because a lot of our families, historically, Navajos, we were agriculturalists. Like we, developed all these strains of vegetables, corn included, and all these other vegetables that you see nationwide. However, now we've come to a point where a lot of our families don't know what it looks like to grow vegetables. Even our own traditional foods. And I can tell you for myself, I was so amazed that food can come out of the ground. When I was little, I was like, what is this? And that's how disconnected some of our families are. I keep thinking this to that time. I was like 8 or 9, just so amazed, like apples grew off trees. And so we're fighting an uphill battle, and we have issues with climate change. How is that affecting our ability to grow foods? And up until recently, actually, this past week, we finally had our first rain in about a year. And so we're experiencing that climate change hard. And we also have issues with water rights. And so we're just fighting on every front, it seems like. So this is like a little thing that we can do to help support our community. And we're excited to offer that. So that's what the donation part is about.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So if you have not yet taken a moment to donate towards the community event between Denee and Bitty Baby Foods, please do so right now if you can. Every dollar makes a difference. Bretta just shared the GoFundMe link, and we'll be sharing it intermittently throughout the event. And if you could do us another solid, if you've already donated, please share it within your networks and let people know what this is going towards. It's a really important Navajo-led event by and for other Navajo community members to help them preserve their foodways. And as Denee mentioned, the effects of climate change are happening right now. And so for folks who are in less rural communities, it might feel like something that is very distant, but it's happening right now. Denee is going to share a little bit more about her personal experience with that on the Navajo reservation and what we can do to support her. And one very, very simple thing you can do right now is head over to that GoFundMe link and donate. Suggested donation of $10 minimum. And that would be fantastic so that she can make sure that that event continues to be low or no cost for her community members. All right, so we're just about ready to get started with the recipe, Denee. But before we dive in, I wanted to just do like 2 or 3 minutes of the basics of terminology use. So one mistake that people make all the time is kind of referring to Indigenous communities as a monolith. So can you share with the attendees tonight what the do's and don'ts are when we're referring to members of different Indigenous communities, Indigenous tribes?
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people forget, because I grew up, I mean, not I didn't, I grew up on the res, but I went to school off the res. And in order to become a dietitian, I did my training in Boston, I did it in Denver, I did it kind of all across the US. I did that distance internship, crazy, crazy time, a lot of suspense. And I noticed that a lot of people, they just didn't know where to place me, or they used really dated terminology to refer to me. And I was just like, okay, I can see you only identify with the natives in the movies, the Tony Norman movies, and the, cowboys and Indians kind of thing. So when it comes to terminology, I think the most appropriate would probably be asking somebody what their specific tribe is. I think that is very respectful to know that we're all separate tribes. There's right now in America, there's over 500 distinct nations in the United States. And so my tribe is called Denee. And so it's that's kind of the most respectful, but if it's just too much to keep track of, which I admit it is sometimes. We've been really using the word Indigenous more lately. Technically, in a federal sense, we are considered American Indian. But I've noticed that a lot of our community is trying to take back the word Indigenous to say, like, we're of this land, we're from the land. We were the original inhabitants. And so we definitely do not appreciate the word Indian. That's one don't is don't call us Indian. You could, but another do would be, saying Native, Indigenous, or and just making sure that you recognize the land that you're on. So I appreciate I-10 and PHC for recognizing that as well. And again, that link is there to kind of see who was historically on the land you're currently on.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Denee. And if you guys have not yet checked out that link for your land acknowledgement, head over to that link as well. We'll resend it now so you can take a look and you can learn a little bit if that's new to you. Awesome. Okay, so I think we've kind of set the groundwork. Just so everyone knows, like, this is happening live. So any cooking mishaps that happen, if I burn my corn, I'm gonna do everything in my power not to do that, but we're rolling with it. We're gonna do a little bit more Q&A as we're cooking. So I think we're ready to go. Denee, do you have all of your stuff out? Does everybody else have all of their ingredients out? By now, you should have received the recipe card via email. If you have not, we're going to send out the link to download the recipe card to you all right now as well, so you can grab that. But I'll give everybody just a second. Can I get a show in the chat? Does everybody have their stuff? Are we ready to go? Awesome. Okay. All right. We're just gonna get started tonight. Okay. All right. So you take the wheel. I got my stuff. I'm gonna follow along, and then after you get us started, I'm gonna just ask some questions.
Sounds good. Okay. So what we're doing tonight is a traditional dish called blue corn mush. So when I think about this traditional Navajo dish, it reminds me of my grandma's house. I think back to when my auntie was making her blue corn mush at the stove, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's like expert hands. In Navajo, blue corn mush is called toshchin. And there's some other languages or other variations of it, depending on where you're from or how it's used. But when it's just by itself, it's called toshchin. And so blue corn mush, it is a very nutritious dish. And it's actually a really great source of calcium. And where we get that calcium is actually from the, let me show you, the juniper ash. So us natives were lactose intolerant, like many people of color. Yep, and that's the smaller one. So I got the heavy duty one, but this is actually pretty high in calcium. And what it does is it aids in a process called nixtamalization. So when you're making it with the blue corn or you're mixing it with the blue corn, it has like this chemical reaction where it releases some extra nutrients, and the corn makes the calcium a little bit more bioavailable. So back in the day, like 100 years ago, when all these anthropologists were coming out and they were saying like, oh, it seems like the Navajos have strong bones. Why don't they don't drink any milk, but why do they have strong bones? Because of this. And so I think it's really important to add this. I know. I think it's really important to add this just because it makes the dish a little bit smoother too. And so the process of cooking blue corn mush, it's if you know how to make polenta, you know how to make corn mush. So, and that's actually how polenta was kind of founded, is by making a hot cereal. They saw we made hot cereal out of corn. So you can use blue corn mush as it's traditionally used. Usually people eat it in the morning at breakfast. But I know some people, they eat it for dinner, and I guess tonight we're eating it for dinner. And so I kind of like to zhuzh it up a little bit and put toppings and everything on there. But traditionally it's just the hot cereal that's eaten. But I know some people, they add milk, they add maple syrup, they add peanut butter, they have all these other mix-ins as well. So to start off, we have, what you're gonna do is you're gonna measure out, oh, you know what? Before I get to that, I forgot.
Yeah.
Let me actually explain this.
So yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, there's something missing.
Yeah.
So this is actually how we traditionally make the hot cereal, either blue corn mush or yellow cornmeal, or puberty ceremony cakes. We use these. These are called greasewood sticks. In Navajo, we call it a dustine. And this is basically our traditional whisk. And it's made from an indigenous plant. And it's made in bundles of 7 traditionally. And just because 7 is like it's a good number in Navajo. So that's how we use it. And I wanted to share a little story. So I got this one. Somebody gifted this one to me actually about last week. I went to.
Did they know this was coming up?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. But I was attending a presentation from another Navajo lady, and I was talking to her afterwards, and she was like, oh, do you want this? And I'm like, of course I want some greasewood sticks. But I feel like it's important. All of my sticks have stories behind it. So this one is from a really amazing indigenous healthcare worker who works out in the Pueblo area. And then this
request to repeat the name of it if you can.
A dustine.
A dustine.
Yeah, a dustine.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then these ones, I have 3 bundles. This one actually comes from, I participated in my niece's coming of age ceremony, and we made her cake out of this. And it's a cake that we make underground, and it's like a humongous cake. It's like 5 gallons of all this hot cereal that's cooked underground. And so we use this to cook. So when we're cooking with this, it's important that you stir in a clockwise fashion, just because clockwise is the way of the sun. And it's like it's a holy way, or it's a way that brings beauty to your life. And so when you're using these, it's good to, or you have, think good thoughts. It's important to think good thoughts, because that's what's going to go into your food. So, if you're like all angry and you're making dinner, like the food's not going to taste as good. So these sticks are a reminder. So the last bundle, I have 3 bundles here, and I'm just like, I've been very blessed. But a few weeks ago, actually, my dad, he brought this out, and he was like, I went over to your Nali's house, his mom's house. And he usually, she passed away a few years ago, but he still goes over there and cleans around her house and kind of keeps an eye on everything. And he was like, I found these in the house. Would you like these? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
So these are like legitimately probably 70 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Because
Like,
my dad told me that he told me that this was probably made for my auntie's coming of age ceremony, and she's like in her 70s now. So what is that? 12, it's like 60 years old.
Yeah.
Probably legitimately 60 years old.
Oh
So I'm kind of building up a collection here, and I like to use these during my other cooking classes just to show like this is our traditional way of making mush. So that's what I'll be using, but you can use your regular whisk.
The whisk is so boring now.
So you need a story behind it.
Yeah, nope, no story. I could make something up, but nothing anywhere near as cool. And one thing that I think is really cool and that you just mentioned is the way that, even in just the way you described using this tool, there's a connection with nature, right? So like stirring in the direction of the sun is already kind of fostering this connection and oneness with nature, and then brings in the mindfulness aspect. Are you aware of the thoughts that are crossing your mind while you're preparing that meal? And that's going into your food, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really important. And I think for a lot of our communities, like for so long, we've been taught or we've been told just to look at food as a collection of nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
At least from the Western perspective, since all these Western healthcare came in, they were like, this is the only reason why you need to eat food. It's just to get your vitamins and your minerals. But historically, we've always had that connection, that mindful connection that we've had with food. And so that's actually a really great point. I probably didn't even recognize that.
It's just this was part of what you do.
So it's like we're the original intuitive eaters. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. That's true.
Okay, so let's get on with the dish because this takes about 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
All right, let's do it.
What you're gonna
Okay,
do.
for those of us who are cooking along, you've got your blue corn out and you've got your water and whisk, right? That's all we, and the juniper ash.
And the juniper ash. And then if you have any toppings.
Okay, cool. All right.
So what you're gonna do, and I believe what everyone got was already roasted, so we don't need to pre-roast it. Sometimes you gotta roast it if you get other blue corn meal. It says roasted on there, right? Okay.
Yeah, roasted blue corn.
So you don't have to roast it. Usually if it's unroasted, you would just put it in a dry pan and you would roast it in there.
Awesome. Okay. I also just wanted to share that this came on the packaging. This really cool quote, walk gentle on Mother Earth, respect all life, including yourself. And it's a message from their grandmothers, so the people who own Blue Corn Custom Designs, which was the business that Denee recommended we purchase our blue corn from tonight. And I just think this is so cool. There's just multiple instances of like treating your food as sacred and acknowledging that it comes from the ground and recognizing that continuum that connects us to where our food comes from and treating it with that level of respect. Okay, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just thought that was so cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I didn't, we have actually like, I actually grind my own blue corn. I grew blue corn last year. So I'm using my own that I grew. Yeah. So you guys, this is the corn I grew.
Oh my gosh, so cool. So I want to ask you about that. So as we're getting the recipe started, I'd love to hear, we chatted briefly about there being different blue corn variations and some other staple foods that are grown on the reservation. So can you share a little bit more about some of the other foods that are grown on the reservation and if they also have some kind of cultural significance to you? I'm just gonna follow along with what you're doing. You put the water in the pot.
Put the water in the pot. Let me explain this one first, but do the water and then don't turn on the heat yet. You want to add the blue corn to cold water. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use your whisk and kind of gently mix it in. Oh, and you know what? Okay, maybe it's too late. That's okay. So I was gonna say maybe start out with 4 cups of water. Because depending on the cornmeal, like the size of the grain, it can turn out thicker or thinner, but we can always add more cornmeal if we need to. Okay. So you're gonna mix it in and then mix in the juniper ash as well. So at the same time. And just kind of mix it and make sure there's no clumps. Then you can turn it on high heat. And my fire isn't turning on, so.
I was like, it would be amazing if we made it without like one small thing going wrong. I also had the same problem just happened, by the way. But we're okay.
Okay, so now you're gonna just put it on high, and what we're waiting for it is to start bubbling. But right now at this stage, you're just gonna try heating it up, but maybe stir it every few seconds, because then it can start to stick at the bottom. So you kind of want to avoid that. So you can kind of feel with your whisk when you move it around at the bottom, you can feel where it starts to thicken up. That's where you want to kind of whisk it in, so that way it's not sticky. So, and you'll notice the color change as it starts to heat up. Right now it's kind of like a dark purple. So this dish, like I said, it's high in antioxidants, and it actually has the same antioxidant that makes blueberries blue. And so it has some of those cancer protective effects as well. So when it comes to corn, I always joke around, like, us natives have like 100 different ways to cook corn. So corn is a very sacred food. So a lot of, at least for, I can only speak for my tribe, just because I'm not too familiar with other tribes and how they view corn, but in a lot of our communities, we talk about the importance of the 3 sacred sisters, which is corn, beans, and squash. In Navajo, we also add a 4th one, which is mountain tobacco. And so corn is very integrated into a lot of Navajo spiritualism. And it's said, like in some of our creation stories, that man and woman were made from ears of corn. And so corn is very sacred, and we have that deep connection to food. And so that's why I think it's important, as a dietitian or as a health professional working in Native communities, it's important for our community to know that they can still eat these foods, because if we tell them that you can no longer eat corn, you're basically telling them you can no longer practice your spiritualisms or your religion, or it's basically you're denying their identity. And so I think it's really important. And I've had people in my office crying because I told them, like, you can have your traditional food, and they were like, what? Like, crying. And it's like, what kind of damage have we done? Seriously, where like somebody feels that. I don't know. It gets me so angry. So that's kind of the work I do. I think back to those instances.
Yeah. Well, Denee, I'd love to, if you don't mind, get a little bit more into that, because we do have some dietitians on the call tonight, and we do have a responsibility, I think, to do everything we can to become more culturally competent, culturally aware, and really actualize what those terms mean rather than just seeing them in like a cultural competence training and then forgetting about them and not bringing them to life. So I would really love to hear about some experiences that you've had in the medical setting, dealing with maybe medical providers who are not from the Navajo, the Denee community, and them kind of doing a little bit of damage to your patient's relationship with food and with their cultural foodways, and some things that we can do to combat that or push back on that.
Yeah, and when it goes back to how do we integrate cultural competence and cultural humility into the way we talk about nutrition or health, I think what's important is for providers to kind of they have to be comfortable with taking a step back and opening their ears and being humble about the information that they receive.
Denee, can I briefly just pop in to ask you, we have one question from an audience member who's cooking along with us, and they were asking if it matters if they're using, like the heat level that they're using, if they're using an electric stove versus a gas stove.
Not really, as long, so we're waiting for bubbles to start to pop up at the top, and then we're gonna turn it down. So you could just leave it a little bit, see how mine is starting to bubble around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what we're waiting for.
Okay.
And I like to
once
wait.
we see those bubbles, do you want us to turn it down low?
Yeah, once you start seeing like more bubbles form towards the middle, then that's when you can turn it low. Because then otherwise it just kind of explodes all over your stove, and we don't want that. So
we don't want that in the recording.
We don't want that in the recording. Again, so now that you feel the bubbles, I can kind of feel the thickness at the bottom.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're kind of whisking in those thick areas at the bottom.
So what should the consistency be like at this point? Like if it's still pretty watery, should we add corn, or what do you think?
If I were to bring out my dietitian, it would be, what is it? Nectar thick.
Oh, nectar thick? Okay, so mine's a little, maybe I put too much water, so I'm gonna go in with a little more corn.
Yeah, do sprinkle it in and make sure you whisk it a little bit more. So otherwise, once it hits the hot, it'll tend to clump up. So you have to really whisk it. I would do a tablespoon.
Okay. Okay, and we also got, I want to get back to the medical question, but we did also get another question about other uses for juniper ash, if there are any that you know of that you want to share.
So if it's right now, it should start like really bubbling up for you guys. So just make sure you're whisking quickly, you guys. I'm like getting really nervous here.
Our multitasking abilities, right?
So medical professionals, I think it's important to just understand that food has that deeper connection to our culture, and that we need to be mindful about how we talk about food. So instead of talking about it, oh, you need to limit your blue corn mush, you need to limit your fry bread, you need to limit your traditional foods, instead talk about how can we add more nutrition to those foods. So like for this blue corn mush, sometimes like I tell people, like maybe add in some peanut butter, add in some other toppings, just to boost the nutrition. But at the same time, if they like their blue corn mush just plain, that's fine too. But just showing them like that there are different options, different ways to eat traditional foods, and also telling the patient, recognizing that it's just not about how many nutrients are in this food. It's also recognizing that food helps our mental well-being. It helps us connect to our family. It helps us connect to our community. And that's important as well, that psychosocial connection that we have. Because I know like a lot of the times we're making traditional food, like during a coming of age ceremony, during when we gather to, we call it butcher a sheep, it's a family affair. And we bring all our loved ones. And that's what my dad said. The last time we butchered a sheep, he was like running around, this is a family affair. And I'm like, okay, Dad, just calm down there. But he was right, you know, and I was just laughing at him. But now I'm like, you know, you're right. It's a time to celebrate connection, and it's a time to celebrate that love you have for your family. Okay, so you should start feeling like how does yours feel?
Mine's feeling kind of a little thicker than nectar thick. It's
Okay.
getting pretty good. We're like not totally at pudding yet, but we're like getting closer to pudding consistency.
Okay, that's good. I think you're good with that.
Okay, good. So yeah, where is everybody? Bread and nectar thick.
So you wanna go for, so when it cools, it's gonna start to cool down to like honey thick. so it's gonna feel loose, but once you take it off the heat as it cools, it's gonna start to thicken up as well.
Okay, and just to make sure for myself and everybody else who's cooking at home, it should be on low heat now.
Yeah, low heat.
Okay, great. So I mean, I would love to hear of like some specific instances, maybe on like how different medical providers have approached Navajo foodways in your experience, and how you have, you know, like managed that in your office.
Yeah, I remember somebody was telling me, so I'm into gardening, and sometimes I end up talking to gardening with people in a medical setting. And somebody was telling me that their pediatrician learned that this family was growing their own food. And the pediatrician told them, oh, the food that's grown in the dirt around here is contaminated. So
Denee, I think we might have lost, you might have frozen on your video. I can still see the video on your phone though, so maybe we can unmute your phone. Can anybody else in the chat hear or see Denee?
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay,
My Zoom is starting. Okay, so you guys, if it feels pretty thick, turn it off, turn the heat off.
Okay, I'm turning mine off. It's feeling pretty thick.
Okay, yeah, turn it off.
This smells so good, by the way. Smells so good.
Just for good luck.
Okay. Clockwise, right?
Clockwise.
Clockwise.
Yeah. Okay, my laptop's restarting for some reason. So we almost made it.
No worries. We're doing great.
All right. So now what you're going to do is you're going to serve it. So grab a bowl and pour, I'd say about a cup and a half is a good amount of serving. And your whisk, make sure you put it into, put it in the water right away, because this stuff is like cement. So you have to make sure that it doesn't start sticking to it right away. Okay.
Okay, got it. Let me grab a little serving spoon.
Yeah. So I'm gonna step away from my stove so I can rinse off my sticks.
Okay. No worries. All right, let me see in the chat, where is everybody at in their cooking process? If anybody's cooking along with us. How is yours looking? How's it smelling? And get ready, because we would love for you all to take a photo of the final product. And if you do post it tag the Planetary Health Collective. It's just at Planetary Health Collective, and use the hashtag Cook for the Climate so that we can see your beautiful creations. And if you do happen to make this later on, we'd also love to see it at that point also. So if you're watching this recording, please share it with us. Yes, mine is also still thickening up a little bit.
Yeah, I think I-10, it sounds like yours is going to be really thick when it cools down, which is fine.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. That's good to me.
Okay, so now you can see that the blue corn mush is a lot darker, and that's because of that ash. And so just to give you a comparison, this was the blue corn.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's dark. So go ahead and plate it. And then I like to, like I said, I like to add in other toppings. So if you have any nut butters or nuts or granola, or I like coconut on top of it for some reason, but I also like to drizzle on like some maple syrup. So actually, let's do this.
Awesome. Welcome, Christina. Thanks for joining us tonight. Cool. Okay, let me see. I got a few different toppings, and I wanted to see like what you think. I got some hemp hearts, and I got some fresh fruit and some granola. Should I just go? I think I'm gonna go for the fruit.
Make it look. I'm always like, make it look pretty.
Okay. I'm a big fan of like colorful food and also playing with my food, so this is perfect.
So we'll make it look pretty here. So it'll look good for Instagram.
Gotta do for the gram. Feed the gram.
Exactly. So I'm doing strawberries. I know in the recipe it says like apples. So whatever fresh fruit you have is good. So there you go. So I did almond butter, strawberries. I'm gonna do like a little bit of, I got some granola, dark chocolate macaroon granola. And I just like to kind of get it all over the place.
Oh, it's great. It's cool that I can see yours like thickening up even just from when you plated it.
Yeah, yeah. And I like to throw extra nuts on there just to kind of increase those heart healthy fats and satiety. And then I go in with the maple syrup. So I like to drizzle that on top. Let's see. And that way you kind of get a good bite of the maple syrup with every single bite.
Yeah, looks so good. Okay.
So I know, so that's the bowl. There we go.
That looks so good, Denee. Oh, I'm so excited to eat this. I can't wait. Okay, I'm like almost done with my toppings. I'm playing around a little too much, but I went fresh fruit. So mangoes, strawberries, blueberries, some granola with almonds, and hemp hearts is what I went with.
That sounds tasty. I got to get some hemp hearts. I'm going to add a little bit more strawberries.
Here's what I got so far.
There we go.
Awesome. Cool.
I know, so Fallon's on the line. So Fallon has a really good recipe for I've been thinking about making it, and that's what I might do with the leftovers, but she has a really good recipe where it's more of like a savory one. This one's sweet, but she has one with like zucchini and onions and cheese, and it's really good. So you can kind of make whatever toppings you want and use it as a base. For even if you want to do like a veggie stir fry, you can use that as a base instead of rice.
That sounds so good. Even as like a savory breakfast thing, like I wonder if you could do some eggs and avocado and do it like that, almost like savory grits kind of, or similar.
Exactly.
So Denee, we've got about 10 minutes left, slightly under 10 minutes left. So maybe we should take a bite together, and then if anybody else from the audience has any questions for us that you want us to address while we have the one and only amazing Denee on the call, please send those. And if you're ready to take a bite with us, should we all just take a bite together?
Sure. Let me move my camera over and you'll see my crazy kitchen. Okay, here we go.
So we do it? Okay. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for teaching us tonight, Denee. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to share. Be careful.
This is so
a little hot.
It's still a little hot. I think I've burnt my tongue so many times in life that I can't feel burning anymore, but no, this is delicious. And it does taste different than like white corn. It does taste different from polenta and white corn grits too.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Cheers. For anybody else who is enjoying their first bites, cheers to you all for joining us tonight also. This is super fun. We're so thankful to have Denee here with us tonight. And reminder, if you have not yet donated to her GoFundMe, please hit that link so that she can continue to host events in her community and keep them low or no cost. And one of the last questions that I would like to close on is just to be sure that we chat a little bit about ways that the people who are watching this tonight and in the future can get involved in supporting Indigenous food sovereignty efforts. And so, of course, one way is to hit that GoFundMe link and to find other local efforts like the ones that you and Bitty Baby Foods are hosting. But do you have any other ideas, any other organizations that you would recommend that people get in touch with or involved with or donate to?
Yeah, there's actually a website called, I think it's AmericanIndianFoods.org. They actually have a whole repository for how you can order from different Indigenous owned businesses. And so they have a whole vetting process, and it's really cool. And so you can get like wild rice from some Minnesota tribes. You can get salmon from the Seattle area from those tribes. So they have a collective, and I always refer back to their list just to give myself some more ideas about what I can try at different cooking classes.
Can you repeat the website? I'm sorry, I'm just going to type it into the chat.
I believe it's AmericanIndianFoods.org.
Okay, just want to pop that into the chat just in case anybody wants to refer to that later on. That is amazing.
Yeah, and if you're in an area, you know, in a city area, there's usually there might be some Indigenous food producers near you. If you're in Minnesota, there is an amazing Indigenous owned restaurant. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's amazing. It's actually a James Beard Award recipient. they just won like two weeks ago or last week. So that was really exciting. And I had the chance to go there last month and it was amazing. So
what's the name of it?
You know, it's called Owamni, OWAMNI.
WAMNI.
Yeah, and that restaurant is in downtown Minneapolis along the river. Yeah.
Oh my God,
amazing food, seriously.
What did you eat?
I had everything. they just so
everything.
It's kind of like tapas where they have small plates for everything, but it's all Indigenous produced. Using traditional ingredients, and even blue corn mush was on their menu. So
there you go.
You go there, you can be like, I know what this is. I made this before.
Like I have some of that in my kitchen right now.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I want to just open it up to the audience, the people who are here with us tonight, just to ask any questions that you might have for Denee in the last couple of minutes here. So if you have anything at all, I know there was a question earlier on about other uses of the juniper ash, like maybe in ceremonies or other like practices in food, or if there's anything else there or other ingredients similar. I saw that there was juniper ash and cedar ash also on the website. Are those kind of used interchangeably?
Yeah, they're used interchangeably, just depending on where you're coming from. But this one says juniper ash, but cedar ash is the same thing. And so traditionally the ash also is used in ceremonies, like when you're cleansing yourself. Also, it's used as protection. So when I was going to school to become a dietitian, you know, that class where you work with cadavers. My husband was really, my husband, at the time he was my boyfriend, but my husband was he was really worried about that, just because there's a huge taboo around being near death. So like every time I would go into class, he would sprinkle this ash in my shoes. So it's used as like a protection.
Cool.
It's used as protection for just, I guess it's protections against like negative feelings or negative vibes. I'll call them negative vibes. and so many different uses for different ingredients, but that's the two I know of, just the mush and then the protection.
Very cool. See, that's why he made the cut from boyfriend to husband.
Exactly, like right? You're looking out for me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, in the last minute here, I just want to thank you so much again today. This is delicious. I'm so happy that I have so much left over, because I promise you I'll be eating this probably for every meal until it's gone, because I really love it. Thank you so much for teaching us all about some Navajo food traditions, the significance of the blue corn, how to use the juniper ash, the spiritual significance and the nutrition significance, and also encouraging all of us to think of our connection with where our food comes from as we're preparing and enjoying our food. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our attendees for being here with us tonight for our first ever Cook for the Climate. Denee, amazing job multitasking. That's hard. Now having whist and talking at the same time, I'm like, wow, how do people do this? It's really difficult. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Our next event will be in July. We'll be joined by Chef Jamil Arzino, who will be teaching us how to make a very fancy puff pastry dish with pistachio cream and homemade pomegranate syrup, completely plant-based and vegan. And yeah, if you're interested, please join us in a future event. And final call for donations. If you have not yet hit that link for Denee's GoFundMe page, please hit that up, donate over there. Every dollar makes a difference. And connect with us at the PHC. We have a Facebook group, which you can find by searching Planetary Health Collective. You can also find us on Instagram if we aren't connected there yet either, and we are just at Planetary Health Collective. And remember, if you do make this later on and you take a photo, please tag us at Planetary Health Collective and at Tumbleweed Nutrition, if that's okay with you too, Denee.
Yep.
Yeah, because we want to see what you make. Oh yes, and Bretta mentioned if you're a dietitian, you will potentially get CEUs for this, right? Once we receive approval for the event. So thank you all so much for being here, and hope to see you next time. Thank you, Denee.
Hook on that.